Max Redding works for the Australian Workers' Union, which has its local offices next door to the old latex house, which has been abandoned for years. Max's concerns are some after-quake cracks high on the tall latex building. He says if this corner collapses, the results will be disastrous.
It will certainly squash my office and the flat above it, at the very least. And if I'm in there, there'll be two people squashed to pieces, whoever else might be in there or walking past.
Concerned, Max contacted council the day after the quake, and when he asked whether the building had been inspected,
the council employee said yes.
Newcastle Council says it produced a report on latex houses' exterior December 29 and an inside-out inspection January 1. Council concluded that the building has no major structural damage and is safe. But Max wasn't satisfied with that answer and still believes the building is dangerous. He contacted council again, but got a different answer to the one they gave before.
Well, they can't tell me anything because they say they can't get in and survey it.
Max Redding says he now wants to see the council's structural reports and until then is afraid to go into his office. Do you feel safe to go into your own building right now?
Not at all. I will not go into it until there is a structural engineer's report given.
The AWU in Sydney has given Max Redding clear instructions on what to do with his office until the amount of risk next door is firmly established.
Get out of it.
Lord Mayor John McNaughton announced on Wednesday that Beaumont Street would reopen for business by Friday. By this morning, that statement had been qualified. The streets would only be open in sections and only to pedestrians. As precious few shops were trading, it was suggested that the opening was really only for retailers to gain access to their premises. But sightseers understandably took advantage of the announcement to flock into the quake-devastated area. The reaction from builders still working on sites the length of the street was obvious.
I think this is absolutely crazy. I mean, just look at it yourself. There's people wandering around watching. In reality, is a very dangerous demolition area. It's absolute madness.
Although anxious to regain lost trade, shopkeepers were equally surprised that the street was reopened so quickly.
They're walking in here and walking in there where they shouldn't be, and there's a truck here with stuff falling into it, and they're standing there looking at it with open mouths. You know, it's silly to me. One brick goes astray, they're gone.
At 11 o'clock, council officers and union leaders agreed the street would be closed again. While police threaded through the crowds clearing sightseers away, Council Health and Building Director Harold Stewart conceded that plans to reopen the street early had been optimistic.
What we probably didn't foresee was the number of people would be simply in here to have a look, and they're just getting in the way.
Is it embarrassing?
Not to me. I mean, we're trying to do things as quickly as possible, but we've got to ensure public safety, and we've tried. It's just one of those things we can't avoid. We'll have to really stay this way for the weekend now and review it on Monday, I think.
The bosun's mate was working in a ballast tank of the TNT Capricornia when he lost his footing and plunged 7 metres. His workmate raised the alarm.
There's a few manholes around where we were, so he's just put one foot down and fallen over forward and just sort of landed on his elbow and broken his arm.
Rescuers faced a daunting task in bringing the man to deck level, their efforts hampered by slippery, wet and cramped conditions.
We had to go down 3 levels. To where the patient was. We put him in a Stokes, we eventually put him in a Stokes litter and got him out that way.
Okay, back over.
You want a bed?
Even when the victim was clear of the tank, there were new obstacles to overcome, with paramedics directing a team of men carrying the injured man. After a 40-minute rescue operation, a stretcher was carefully edged down the gangplank. The man was treated at Royal Newcastle Hospital for a dislocated shoulder and discharged late this afternoon.
The track is expected to be soft tomorrow, and Paul Landig is a proven wet tracker. Eye of the Sky is another who relishes the sting out of the ground, and he has claims despite his big weight. Gary Harley suggests you throw in High Spy to complete your trifecta, and for the Rosehill Daily Double, Yarra Bay in the first leg and Joanne in the second leg, which is race 7. Moonee Valley's the venue for racing in Melbourne tomorrow, and Dowie along with Very Droll should provide you with a daily double. And for the Moonee Valley trifecta on race 7, the numbers you want: 2, 6 and 4, Dowie to beat Balmonero and Edward Mack. They are racing at beautiful Broadmeadow tomorrow, and for the daily double, try March Formula in the first leg and Remo Valley in the second leg, while for your trifecta, Remo Valley should get the nod from Gred Vane and Notorious Sun. The heats of the time-honoured Carlton Intercity Pace will highlight tomorrow night's Maitland Harness Racing Club's meeting. For the daily double, Eagleton Power and Overactive should greet the judge first, while for the trifecta, 7, 4 and 3, Overactive to beat Kyala Fling and Karma Fella. To be run in a holiday atmosphere with free admission, it's a chance for everyone to enjoy themselves and have a flutter. And one lucky racegoer will win a 14-day CTC cruise, just the trip to spend a little of the money they could win on the horses. Smart Randwick trained sprinter Gems Toy is selected to beat a quality field in the Cup, and Connections will be looking to emulate Bold C's performance last January.
Bold C! This is the real Bold C! He stood up today and took a bow!
Gems Toy is a recent Rosehill winner, but he was a little disappointing at his last outing on the same track earlier this month. He will appreciate a sharp drop in weight tomorrow, and his major opposition will come from Cloud Chief and Beat the Traffic. For the daily double at Broadmeadow tomorrow, Gary Harley likes Bel Atalante in the first leg and Sylvia's in the second leg.
Last Monday, 5 children drowned when they were trapped aboard the cruiser Ngluka that sank off Snapper Island. On Saturday night, 44-year-old Leslie Waddell drowned after she was apparently trapped in a boat that sank and capsized off Corrie Island. The Nelson Bay Police launched Cess Abbott attended both accidents and desperately called for assistance. But the Tea Gardens boat was unable to help because police are still waiting for repairs to their craft that was damaged in November last year. It had one engine seize as it was heading to yet another boating accident on the Mile River. Quotes to have the damaged motor repaired average around the $4,000 mark. However, to replace the motor would only be $4,500. A departmental ruling says that both motors must be replaced at the one time, giving the department a bill of just under $10,000, money they just don't want to part with. The government has frozen all maintenance expenditure on trailered police vessels until the Grey Report on Emergency Services is tabled in Parliament. This is despite 11 people drowning in Port Stephens and Mile Lakes in the last 2 years, 3 people suffering spinal injuries on the waterways, and 3 serious boating accidents in just 2 months. Senior Constable Jeff Avery from Tea Gardens Police says if their boat had been operational last Saturday night, Ms Waddell may still be alive.
It's a possibility that had police been able to respond immediately to the vessel sinking, but I think also the time factor from when the vessel went down to the time the alarm was raised played a very big factor in the fact that she was not able to be saved.
As well as not being able to help in rescues, Constable Avery says the boating public is aware they cannot carry out policing of the area.
Well, without a boat, many of the areas that we're, or most of the areas that we're getting the complaints in, we cannot get to those areas without a boat. So then we have to refer the complaints to Mr Jim West, the Maritime Service Officer at Nelson's Bay, and he is only one man with one boat, and he's got all of Port Stephens, all of the Mile Lakes and Mile River, as well as the Karua River to look after.
Since late November, Bulahdelah Police have also had trouble with their boat. Its battery has collapsed and funds have not been found to replace it, leaving one MSB boat and the Nelson Bay Police launch to cover an area 6 times the size of Sydney Harbour. Darren Curtis for NBN News.
Phil Hanscorp is another world champion to come from the NBN viewing area. A postie from the Central Coast, Phil has taken the BMX cycle world by storm. Aged 30, you may think that he's a little old to be pushing these machines around a track, but with more than 10,000 active members in Australia, it's a sport for all ages and one that they take very seriously. Phil has won numerous Australian and state titles, and last October at the Chandler Velodrome in Brisbane, Phil went one step further to claim the world title in his age group of 26 to 39. Also from the Central Coast, a young man who has had a marvellous year in the boxing ring, Troy Waters from Kulnura. Troy is the current holder of the Commonwealth Light Middleweight crown, a title that he successfully defended twice in 1989. The first was against Welshman Mike Harris, with Troy right on top throughout the bout. The second time was in September against Judas Clotty of Ghana. Troy again boxed beautifully to retain his crown. But his big moment came in October when he took a shot at the IBF Light Middleweight world title. But Gianfranco Rossi of Italy proved a little strong, and Troy had to settle with the knowledge that he will get another shot at the crown.
It's now been left up to an archaeologist to determine exactly what these old sandstone walls are. Until today, Watt Street was out of bounds to the public. Today, sightseers took their first glimpse at what could be an important discovery for Newcastle. 3 days ago, the State Planning Department put a stop to any more demolition work on the site, saying the possible convict cells, dating back to 1837, were protected under the Heritage Act. The department has also offered financial assistance to employ an archaeologist. Carrington Chambers, a non-listed building, is jointly owned by local doctors, solicitors, the Seamen's Union and a publishing firm. Spokesman for the owners, Dr. Philip Fury, says it's the second time demolition work has been held up. The first was a week ago in a bid to protect the building's facade. That was later withdrawn. He claims the new hold-up is costing owners not only an unnecessary delay to demolition, but also a great deal of money. He says the stones are old foundations, similar to those found under many Sydney buildings. This plan, drawn up by local architects in 1982 for extensions to the building, shows similar foundation markings. But the fate of this site and of new offices of the joint owners remains to be determined by an archaeologist in the next few days. Rebecca Skinner for NBN News.
The Port of Newcastle takes around 375,000 tonnes of petroleum products each year, unloaded at this berth in Wickham. With a school just 150 metres away and the main road even closer, the Maritime Services Board has decided to move it to another site.
Whilst it is safe to operate at the moment, it's unlikely that in the future safety standards will permit a berth of that kind to remain there.
Added encouragement for the MSB was the need for major renovations at Wickham. The proposed replacement will be of similar size to the old berth and is marked for development on the western side of Kooragang Island. MSB Managing Director Jeff Connell says, as part of the Greiner government's policy, the MSB has advertised for private development.
Well, it is government policy to encourage the private sector to develop and invest in port and associated infrastructure.
The $6.2 million plan is designed not only for petroleum, but chemical products as well. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
"15 local surfers today took to the water as part of the Coke Department of Sport and Recreation surf clinics to get that edge on their opponents in competition surfing.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
Police were called to bush between the Pacific Highway and the abandoned highway about 6 kilometres south of Karua in an area known as 10 Mile Creek. Homicide detectives cordoned off the site from where the badly disfigured body was removed last night. The corpse could have lain undiscovered for months had it not been for a local trail bike rider.
Well, I was just riding a motorbike up here and seen two wild dogs run across the road here. And I thought, oh yeah, I'll go and have a look. So I went in there and there was a body there.
It could still be several hours before a government medical officer establishes a cause of death, but already the case is being treated with suspicion. The lack of clothing or identification, along with the isolation of the area, points to foul play. As scientific police sifted through the site, dozens of police trainees from Maitland and Newcastle combed surrounding bushland.
We're missing some limbs, 2 forearms and both legs, and we're missing clothing.
Searchers uncovered dozens of items, including about 18.22 calibre bullet shells, a bong used to smoke cannabis, and what appear to be some rags. So far, none has been linked to the death. It's thought the lower arms and legs could have been removed by either wild dogs or feral pigs. The only new discovery was a scalp of long, light brown hair. Police revealed they have also found a wristwatch, which may be a clue to the victim's identity.
Well, we're satisfied it's come from the victim, although it wasn't found on the remains of the body, but it was found nearby, and there was certain evidence there to suggest that it had come from the body.
Are you aware of anybody that may have gone missing over the last couple of weeks?
Well, there are several people been reported in the Hunter area, but of course our search will go much wider than that.
It's not the first time a body has been found dumped on this isolated back road. 8 years ago, the remains of 28-year-old German hitchhiker Bernd Assmann were found here 200 metres from the present site. That discovery sparked an international hunt for his identity and a national hunt for his killers. No doubt police are hoping this inquiry will be solved more easily. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
Rail cuts on Newcastle suburban stations will go ahead, despite figures showing passenger numbers have almost doubled. State Rail says the train service is still too expensive.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
Chris Lawrence from Lisarow is the defending champion of the Sports Star of the Year award and will be hard to beat again. In February, he won the Tasmanian Windsurfing Championship and was second in the Australian Funboard title. In April, he helped Australia to win in the World Team Sailing Championship in Italy. He was also second in the Italian Summer Cup. 2 more wins on home waters and a second in the World Amateur Funboard Selection Trials set him up for the crowning achievement, the successful defence of his World Mistral title at Corpus Christi in Texas. Chris thrashed the opposition to win the overall world crown, the lightweight championship, the course racing title, the marathon, and he was second in the slalom. Add to that several other awards, and Chris Lawrence has had a spectacular year.
They have travelled from all parts of the state to the Newcastle University for the week-long training clinic and selection trials. Night stars Scott Glanville, Scott Seymour and Ashley Gordon have been drilling the youngsters under the guidance of coaching director Keith Onslow. However, Manly's dynamic duo of Des Hasler and Cliff Lyons today polished their skills, giving no quarter when it came to footwork. The camp will culminate in a trial game against the Newcastle Knights SG Ball side on Friday at the old university ground. A New South Wales Aboriginal side will then be selected to meet Queensland at the Sydney Stadium as the curtain raiser to the first State of Origin game.
Over 100 devotees of karate from all over Australia are attending an open camp this weekend. 5 differing styles of the noble Japanese art of self-defence are participating: Goju-ryu, Shito-ryu, Kempo-kan, Koji-ki and Ki-uku-shin-ki. Under the guidance of Australia's chief karate coach Peter Oberecker and a band of high-level coaches, youngsters and seniors alike are receiving the very best tuition in all styles. With over 20 years' dedication to his work, Peter Oberecker is not only passing on the benefit of his extraordinary talent.
The main thing I have tried over the last 15 years is to spread the difference between sport karate and traditional karate. A sport karate gets a lot of attention because a guy can be a champion. Then most guys a few years later never hear them. Traditional karate, like the guys I've got here, most of my high grades have been with me 15, 20 years. My teacher's 60 years old and is still fit and training. That's the difference.
In one room it was a gathering of who's who in the world of black belts, and David Lambert from Goulburn launched himself into the demonstrations, raising a few eyebrows from his dutifully impressed students. And you would need a bit of ticker to do this.
You've got to have the right heart. Whether you train hard and mean what you say, that's what it's all about. I've met many karate instructors that say one thing and then do another. And this is wrong, in my opinion, and we try not to do that.
And late this afternoon, a meeting of warriors from days gone by, with a medieval society willing to pass on skills from a foreign country to pupils who have learnt their technique from the land of the rising sun.
More than 700 people attended the service at Christchurch Cathedral, including the Prime Minister, the Governor-General and the Premier. The Bishop of Newcastle, the Right Reverend Alfred Holland, said the city should not only be rebuilt with bricks and mortar, but spiritually as well. While heroes of the quake were praised, the service was to remember those who had died in the tragedy. 13 candles were lit in their honour.
The buses have returned to Hunter and Scott Streets, along with many of the shoppers who've stayed clear of the quake-stricken central business district. Business is still slow, in many cases down 30 to 40% on regular January figures. But retailers hope improved sales today may be a turning point.
There seems to be quite a lot of people coming into town now that the buses are on, and I do think that has made a difference.
I should say it'd be about at least another 25 to 30% today, compared to last Monday's and last Tuesday's sales so far. And that's, I've still got another couple of hours to go yet.
It has picked up quite well this week, mainly because of getting the buses back on Hunter Street. People are starting to come to town.
Today it's not too bad, there's a lot of people around today. But we're really giving it away, unfortunately.
In Hunter Street, a steady stream of shoppers picked their way along the barriers. For many, it was their first visit to the city since the earthquake.
Have you been into the city very often since the quake?
No, this is my first time.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of them that haven't been in here, you know. This is my first time in since it's happened. Is this your first time back in the city?
Yeah. It's going well, considering.
In nearby Derby Street, the restaurant industry has taken a beating, with one restaurateur estimating a 40% drop in trade. But despite their predicament, there's a mood of cautious optimism among many city traders. To assist them, the City Centre Committee has organised a series of promotions to entice business back to the central business district, culminating in a foreshore concert and extended trading hours this Sunday.
Just before closing at 9:30 last night, around 10 patrons were finishing up their drinks, staff were clearing tables and counting the day's takings on a counter behind the bar. Two men then burst through the club's two sliding entry doors and ordered everyone to get down. Patrons were then herded toward the dance floor by a shotgun-toting man wearing overalls and a balaclava, while the second man ran to the counter where more than $10,000 lay. Once the thief had cleared the counter, he then headed for the safe room, ignoring a large safe that contained thousands more in silver coins. The balaclava-clad man checked a smaller safe where notes and gold coins are left. Once loaded up, they ran from the club, completing their raid within 8 minutes. Although the bandits were dressed in overalls, police have received good descriptions of the pair, including a distinguishing mark on one of them, a large lump on the bridge of his nose. Police believe the pair may have been casing the club for some time to know the most vulnerable point during the closing procedure. Darren Curtis for NBN News.